"This," Thorn said, his voice surprisingly clear despite the tremor in his hands, "is a Terran instrument, a violin. I would play something." He lifted the instrument with reverence, settling it under his chin, the familiar curve, a comfort, against his jawbone. He picked up the bow. The reaction was immediate and derisive. Kalen let out a harsh bark that translated as scornful laughter. "You disrupt the brink of war with noise-making. Pathetic." "Guards, silence this insect." Lyria's light flickered with something akin to distaste. "Ambassador, your species' primitive sonic expressions are irrelevant to matters of galactic consequence. Desist." Thargon warriors took a menacing step forward. Elusian resonances shifted, preparing to neutralize the disturbance. The mediators projected frantic C's, GLYPHS. Thorn closed his eyes. He blocked out the hostility, the scorn, the imminent threat. He focused on the feel of the wood, the tension of the strings, the weight of the bow. He reached into his neural implant, calling forth the not just the notes, but the feeling, the vast, aching sorrow of a species that had nearly destroyed itself, the fragile hope that persisted in the ashes. He thought of Rossi. He thought of Earth's silent cities. He thought of his granddaughters. Laughter. He drew the bow across the A string. The first note, pure and clear, pierced the charged atmosphere like a shard of ice. It wasn't loud. Compared to the Thargon threats or the Elusian hum, it was fragile. Yet, it cut through the noise, resonating in the chamber's acoustics with an unexpected purity. Kalen froze mid-gesture. Lyria's intense glow stuttered. Thorn ignored them. He poured everything into the music. The bow became an extension of his grief, his fear, his desperate, fragile hope. The Adagio unfolded a slow, heartbreaking ascent, a melody that spoke of loss so profound it bordered on the sacred. It was the sound of endings, of irreplaceable things gone, of loneliness echoing in an indifferent universe. He played for the dead of Earth. He played for the insignificance of humanity. He played for the futility he felt in that chamber. He played the sorrow that bound all sentient beings, regardless of chitin or light, regardless of ambition or serenity. The second phrase began, deeper, richer, the vibration resonating in Thorn's own chest, humming through the violin's body. He felt tears pricking his eyes, not of fear, but of the raw, unshielded emotion channeled through the strings. He didn't look up. He simply played, pouring centuries of human anguish and quiet endurance into the ancient melody, sending it out into a chamber poised for destruction. A single, fragile thread of shared feeling woven against the abyss. The first note had been a surprise. The unfolding melody was something else entirely. It hung in the air, fragile, yet undeniable, a stark counterpoint to the imminent storm. Commander Kellen's massive fist, raised to signal his warriors, remained suspended. The grinding of his mandibles ceased. The Thargon creatures of action and blunt sensation found the complex, aching sound perplexing. It bypassed their translators, hitting something more primal. One warrior near the back tilted his head, a low, confused rumble escaping his chest vents instead of a growl. Across the divide, Prelate Lyria's luminous form flickered, not with power, but with disturbance. The Adagio's harmonic structure, though simple by Elusian standards, resonated with a raw emotional frequency, their own complex song-weaving, often intellectualized. The profound sorrow embedded in every note vibrated against their innate attunement to cosmic harmonies. It wasn't dissonance. It was a different kind of truth, painfully direct. Lyria's containment field softened minutely, the actinic glare dimming to reveal the subtle, shifting patterns within. The mediator's frantic holograms stabilized, projecting symbols of confusion rather than alarm. The chamber's oppressive tension didn't vanish, but it shifted, warped by the unexpected intrusion of pure, undiluted feeling. Thorn remained oblivious. He was lost in the music, in the physical act of drawing the bow, the pressure of the strings under his calloused fingertips, the vibration humming up his arm and into his bones. He played the slow, aching climb, the melody a lamentation that seemed to stretch time itself. He played for the silent graves on Mars, for the choked oceans of Earth, for the fragile bubble of life clinging to Luna. He played for the terrifying vastness outside the conclave viewports, where human lights were mere pinpricks against the galactic dark. The Adagio built, note by agonizing note. The initial surprise in the chamber deepened into something else. The Thargon warriors, bred for aggression and conditioned to despise weakness, found the raw vulnerability in the music unsettling. It didn't threaten them, it confused them. The complex brew of sadness and endurance it conveyed was alien to their straightforward worldview. Kalen slowly lowered his arm, the energy field around his weapon emitter flickering out. His multiple eyes narrowed, not in anger now, but in intense, unfamiliar concentration. The sound seemed to seep through his armored hide, resonating in a place deeper than logic. For the illusions, the impact was more profound. The Adagio's structure, while linear, possessed a harmonic purity that resonated with their core being, but it was the emotional payload that struck them. Their song-weaving was an expression of cosmic order, collective purpose, intricate beauty. This was the sound of individual suffering, of irredeemable loss, of a spirit bowed but not broken. Lyria felt a strange tightness within her non-corporeal form, an echo of the melancholy woven into the Terran's music. It resonated with ancient illusion, elegies for lost star systems, a shared thread of grief across the vastness of existence they rarely acknowledged so directly. The defensive resonance around her delegation softened further, the humming dropping to a barely perceptible tharm. Thorn reached the piece's devastating climax. He leaned into the strings, the bow pressure fierce yet controlled, drawing out a long, sustained note that soared with unbearable poignancy before beginning its inevitable, heartbreaking descent. The sound filled the chamber, not with volume, but with profound presence. It was the sound of acceptance, of grief fully embraced, a quiet monument to loss. As the final lingering notes faded, dissolving into the recycled air, Thorn slowly lowered the violin and bow. He opened his eyes, blinking away the moisture blurring his vision. His hands trembled now, the adrenaline draining away, leaving him hollow and exposed. He braced himself for the renewed fury, the scorn, the command to be dragged away. Instead, he was met with silence. Not the tense silence before the storm, but a deep, profound, and utterly stunned stillness. It pressed in on him, heavier than the previous threats. The vast chamber felt like a vacuum. He dared to look up. Commander Kalen stood utterly motionless. His obsidian hide seemed less like armor and more like stone. The burning amber fire in his eyes had dimmed, replaced by a look of profound, almost bewildered contemplation. One of his lower hands, unconsciously, had risen to rest over the central plating of his thorax, where a primary heart might be. He wasn't looking at Thorn. He was staring into the middle distance, as if seeing something entirely new. Prelate Lyria's luminous form had dimmed significantly. Her usual sharp edges had softened, the light within swirling slowly, like dust motes caught in a sunbeam. Her containment field was barely visible. She wasn't serene. She looked shaken. Her gaze, finally, was fixed on Thorn, but without disdain. There was wonder there, and a deep, unfamiliar sadness echoing the music she had just absorbed. The Thargon warriors stood like statues, their aggressive postures gone. Some looked down at their own hands. Others exchanged glances filled with confusion and a dawning sense of something they couldn't name. The low, threatening rumbles had ceased entirely. The illusion delegates had lost their collective focus. Their subtle hum was gone. They seemed turned inward, their lights pulsing softly, individually, each processing the shared sorrow in their own way. The mediator's holograms displayed a single pulsing glyph, a complex multi-layered symbol. Thorn's implant translated hesitantly as profound cognitive effective reorientation in progress. No one spoke, no one moved. The air still crackled, but with a different energy now, the aftershock of shared vulnerability. The humbling weight of a grief that transcended species and ideology. Thorn stood alone in the center of this stunned silence, the worn violin held loosely in his hand, the echo of the Adagio hanging like a ghost in the air. The precipice was still there, war still loomed, but the ground beneath their feet had irrevocably shifted. The impossible had happened, the ignored, the irrelevant had spoken, and in the language of shared sorrow, he had been heard. The silence stretched, thick and fragile. Ambassador Thorn felt the weight of every gaze, thargon, elusian, mediator, pressing down on him. The violin in his hand felt suddenly alien, a conduit for something far larger than himself. He had gambled everything on a fragment of music and a desperate belief in shared feeling. Now, adrift in the aftermath, he had no script, no precedent. He was a still point in a universe holding its breath.